What is up, Hammerheads? Welcome back to the Forge. Today we're going to be continuing our basic knife making series here on the channel. Today we're going to be drilling the holes for our handle, finishing out our bevels and our edge, and doing a lot of grinding to get this knife in shape because we will be hardening it at the end of the video. So alright guys, let's get some metal hot, start hammering. Alright guys, so I am just center punching where I want my holes to be, where we're going to be drilling for each one of our pins. I'm not going to show the process of drilling the holes because it's just drilling 3 holes. Nothing real special there. Alrighty, so here we're just defining out our bevels some more and finishing out the shape of our blade. Just doing any touch-ups that need to be made on it. Okay guys, remember when you're working on the bevels to make sure that you straighten your blade back out as you're working so you don't get that weird curve and your point keeps pushing up too high. Alright, so we're just making sure our blade is good and straight. Don't forget to look down, from the handle down the spine and from the handle down the blade. Just down the edges of it like I'm doing here, guys, so you know that everything is straight. You don't want any curves in it before you start grinding. Alright guys, I know I'm going to have some people comment about me not wearing gloves while I'm grinding after I recommended in the last video that we wear gloves. But I do this whenever, I wear gloves off and on, I guess I should say, because whenever I'm doing a lot of with angle grinding and cutting and a lot of shaping with the angle grinder, I like wearing gloves because there's a lot of the stone pieces can come off and hit your hands and things just for the safety. But whenever I'm doing fine grinding and shaping with what I'm doing, especially if the blade has already been heat treated, I want to know when the blade really starts heating up so I can cool it down without messing up my heat treat. So guys, you can see that I have a screw screwed down into the table of the sander there. I put it there at a very specific angle that I like having my blades at. It makes it very easy to be able to hold that angle, and I'm not trying to fight when it's freehand, because when you're just getting started, it's nice having it also, because if you've never freehand sand before and trying to hold that angle, the blade can jump around a lot, and having that there, it makes it to where everything stays good and tight and you get a good clean edge cut into it. It also works real well when you're going to cut in your acostas, that both sides are lined up perfectly. One thing you do have to look out for when you're using a screw or something that's hardened steel as a guide is that it could scratch your blade. But I've used this one quite a few times and it really hasn't had any problems. So something to look at a little bit later as you're doing your knife. If you want a little bit more just kind of a makeshift jig, just to kind of help get you started. So guys, we will be doing freehand grinding on the last inch to half inch of the blade, because the way the tip is, it doesn't sit right on the jig. So what I normally do is get the majority of the edge ground in, and then I'll go in because I have the angle I already need, and I'll slowly grind in the edge all the way out to the tip. And just take your time with it, guys. There's no rushing this part, especially when you haven't heat treated and tempered or anything. Just take your time. If it gets a little too hot, cool it down, but you're not going to mess anything up in this process. Just so just make sure you get it done right, get all the angles that you need to be done, cut in, exactly the way they need to be. Alright guys, so when you're going in for your heat treat, make sure you keep your material moving around. If you leave it just sitting in one spot, it can form some air bubbles around it and it won't cool down properly. Also, when you come out of the oil, sometimes you'll have a little bit of residual heat left in your blade, and if you have any bends, sometimes you can fix those. Just be very careful that you don't crack your blade or break it. Alright guys, let's get real for a minute and talk about what we learned today. We've drilled the holes in our handle, and I didn't show the drilling of the holes because it's just drilling 3 holes, but I will say this is very, very, very hard metal. I cannot say that enough. Drill bits from Harbor Freight or Walmart really won't drill through this. You need to spend, if you're drilling the holes, spend the money and buy a very good couple of drill bits. I know for a fact I burn up probably 2 or 3 drill bits drilling these 3 holes today. A couple of them were kind of older, but I'm just letting you know, if your material is still a little bit hard, sorry guys, if your material is still just a little bit hard, it will burn up a bit and you're not going to make any progress and you're going to get frustrated. So just take your time drilling your bits. I always try to use a lube, oil or something as I'm drilling to help keep the material cooled down. If you're using a drill press, it's easier. I didn't do it with the drill press up here. I just used my Black & Decker hand drill and it worked fine. But just go slow with it because I snapped one bit because I was going too fast. And it happens. It's going to happen a bunch. But if you're punching the holes, do this in multiple heats. Don't try to punch in one heat. Punch one hole. If it takes 2 heats, 3 heats, that's fine. Then punch the next hole, then punch the next hole. And use a good punch when you're doing it. I would use one that you handmade. I grabbed one of the cheap ones that I had to get a drill bit out. And if you look, you can see where it cut into my cut into my punch. And it actually got hung up in there because it was just so hard. So use a very good punch while you're doing this. And take your time. The material is extremely hard now. So you can see it. I showed that a file escaped right across it. You will heat your material up till a magnet doesn't stick to it anymore. You've seen that I did not heat up the handle a lot. I left it alone because I'm fine with it being softer. But the blade itself, I heated to critical heat. Depending on where you live, that's different temperatures. Depending on what time of the year you're doing this, it all depends on that. You know, I mean, there's a million things that go into factor. So I always use a magnet. When the magnet stops sticking to it, I know I'm at critical heat, and that's when I quench. Remember, I'm using a vegetable oil, and I did heat my oil up a little bit beforehand because it was a little bit cooler morning this morning whenever I was getting started. So I heated up a piece of steel, I put it in my oil and let it warm up a little bit before I quenched. If your oil's very, very cold or really cold, it could crack your blade. So if it is in the winter time or cooler times of the year when you're doing this and you are making a file knife, remember you can possibly crack your blade if you don't warm your oil up a little bit. All right, guys, so what's your next process in this? Your next process is going to be the tempering process. It's going to be a 2-hour cycle. Some people do 2 2-hour cycles. I know people that do a couple. I only ever really do 1, and my blades turn out really well. But you're going to heat your oven up. Don't put it in while it's preheating, or your blade will get won't heat treat right. Once your oven is up to temperature, I can't tell you what temperature it is because I don't know your oven. If your oven's gas versus electric, that will affect it. My oven is an electric oven. It's a Samsung, I think. I don't remember. I put it at 435 degrees and it does what it needs to do. My recommendation is if you have any mild steel flat bar laying around to cut you a piece, sand it to where you can see the metal really well, and do a couple of tests on your material. And also pick up an oven thermometer at Walmart, or I don't even really know where they sell them anymore. I think Walmart has them over in their cooking section, that you can set inside your oven and actually see what the temperature gauge is, because a lot of time the dial is wrong. It gets close, but it's not exact. So where mine is 435, if you live up north, yours might actually have to be at 450. It all depends on your oven, where you live. I mean, there's a big formula for this. So you're going to do a 2-hour cycle on your blade. If you want to do 2 2-hour cycles, you're more than welcome to do that. Heat it up, or put it in there after your oven's heated up. Don't put it in while it's preheating. Let it run its cycle. Turn off your oven. I crack open the door, let it cool down. You can run your cycle again. I know people that do 2 1-hour cycles, so they'll run a cycle, let it cool down, take their knife out, preheat the oven again, and do it again. Really depends on what you want to do. But we're going to do that next, and you're also going to need your handle scales. So whatever it is that you want to use for your handle scales, if you're using wood, micarta, G10, epoxied, anything that you want to do, pick that up. We will be shaping out handles and setting pins. You're also going to need 2-part epoxy. I've used the epoxy brand. I have used Gorilla Glue. Both of those have worked very well for me. There's other brands out there I just haven't used yet, like the bigger bottles, that I know work very well. I used JB Weld once, the 2-part epoxy, and I could have done something wrong, but it got real rubbery. It didn't harden. So look for something that works on wood and metal, or plastic and metals, that works on everything. I've had very good luck with the epoxy brand, and I've had very good luck with the Gorilla Glue brand. You will also need some kind of clamp or vise to put your material in when we go to do the handles on it. Trying to think, but I think that's everything we're going to need for the next video, guys. And then we're actually going to be finish grinding in our bevels, getting our edge set, and finishing out our knife. So guys, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the next one. God bless. Keep hammering.